everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Melissa Potts. I'm the Volunteer Program Manager with California State Parks Foundation. And California State Parks Foundation is an independent, member-supported nonprofit dedicated to protecting and preserving the California State Park system for all. And through our volunteerism program, we plan over 100 projects throughout the year to support about 30 projects throughout the state of California. And we're very excited to have you all be joining us today as volunteers that have participated in a workday with us this past year. We just can't thank you enough for supporting the program and are really excited for days like today where we can give back to you all and provide a really fun learning and education opportunity just as a thank you. And the work days that you all have helped support really do provide such incredible impacts on our state parks and help protect the unique biodiversity that they hold. And we just really can't thank you enough. And so today we have our entire volunteerism team with us. Amy, you can go to the next slide. I'd also like to introduce Samantha Joseph. She is our Associate Director of Philanthropy. That's me, Melissa Potts, Volunteer Program Manager again. And then we also have Trisha Alger, our Volunteer Program Coordinator. I think all of you have interacted with us in one way or another. I know we have a lot of core leaders and even some of our other California State Parks Foundation staff with us today. And so we're all here to welcome you. The three of us will be helping Amy monitor the chat. And with that, I would like to introduce our very special guest today. Our presenter is Amy Patten. She is with California Native Plant Society, and she is the Rare Plant Treasure Hunt Manager, which if that isn't the coolest title, I don't know what is. But with that, I'll let Amy introduce herself and kick us off for this wonderful presentation she's put together. She's really tailored it for state parks and for this audience. And so just Amy, thank you so much for being with us today.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for having me today. Really excited to talk with you all. In addition to working at California Native Plant Society or CNPS, I'm also a state parks volunteer too. So I volunteer at Rancho del Oso, which is the coastal side of Big Basin. So I love California state parks. I've had a lot of amazing experiences getting to work with state park staff and volunteer, and state parks really supports us with a lot of the research and conservation efforts that we do around the state. So if you haven't heard of CNPS before, we're a nonprofit. We work all around the state. We've got about 50 staff and about 10,000 members. Doing work to protect native plants and the special places where they live. So we have a conservation and advocacy team that helps protect some of these critical habitats. We have education and communications staff that put on all sorts of cool events and outreach efforts. We organize native plant gardening and horticulture resources. And then we have our plant science team, which does vegetation mapping around the state. And then I'm part of the Rare Plant program. So my project is called the Rare Plant Treasure Hunt. And that's an effort between scientists and land managers and community scientists to get up-to-date information on rare plants throughout the state. So a lot of our rare plants are only known from really old records, like someone in the 1930s saw a rare plant and just said that they saw it on a mountaintop and really vague location, or even records that have been visited more recently that don't have any information on status and trends of the population. So we try and visit as many of these populations as possible and record up-to-date information, record information on threats that we see maybe impacting the population, and then share that information with land managers to get those rare plant populations protected. And we also put on some community outreach events where we teach botanical skills trainings for people that are interested in rare plant work or as a career or just for fun. We also have an effort through a collaborative called California Plant Rescue to seed bank rare plants throughout the state. And I've done a lot of seed banking in state parks, so I'll talk about that throughout the presentation. And then the Rare Plant Program also runs the Rare Plant Inventory online, which is a database of all of our rare plants in the state. And we assign California Rare Plant ranks, which I'm going to talk about a little bit later in the presentation. So today we're going to start out with some definitions, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about how cool our native flora is in California. And then we're going to go over some of the amazing rare plants in our state parks that I've worked with, or some of my collaborators have done work with. Then we're going to go over some free resources for learning more about plants, and close it out with a few tips for learning more about rare plants. So California has a really amazing flora. We've got over 6,500 species of native plants. And if you're not familiar with what a native plant is, that's a species that occurs naturally without a human introduction. And there's a lot of reasons why we care about native plants. Our wildlife has evolved with them, important part of the food web. Their habitat for nesting or shelter for wildlife. Humans have also co-evolved with native plants as food and medicine. They support pollinators that support our agriculture in California. Represent a huge piece of the amazing biodiversity in the state, and they're beautiful and fun to look at a lot of the time. So conversely, a non-native plant is a plant that arrived through a human-mediated source. So plants that have escaped from agricultural crops or gardens, or have come in through vehicles or clothing or shipping, and have started growing in California as a result of that introduction. And an invasive species is a non-native plant that causes damage either economically or ecologically. So these plants usually have really large seed banks, they can grow almost anywhere, and they often outcompete our native plants. And then there's a number of reasons why a plant can be considered rare. Most of our rare plants have a limited geographic range. Some of them have very few populations. We've got a lot of rare plants only known from 1 or 2 populations. They could have low numbers of individuals in each site. And in addition to all of these, also be facing conservation threats throughout the ranges, and in many cases have become more rare due to human activities. So plants can be rare for natural reasons as well. They might specialize on a particular rock or soil type, like serpentine endemics. You hear a lot about serpentine's one of, I think it might be our state rock. And it's got really unusual properties in the soil. So a lot of plants have evolved on serpentine and speciated into rare, super isolated populations. They might have co-evolved with a specific pollinator or seed disperser that limits where they can grow and live. And they might have poor reproductive output, so low rates of germination, maybe they don't produce very many seeds, or their dispersers limit how far plants can spread out from that source population. And unfortunately, humans have caused major threats and declines to rare plants throughout the state. So there are a lot of species that were once abundant, but have become rare just through human activity. So habitat loss and fragmentation is one of our biggest drivers of rarity, over collecting for horticulture, competition from introduced species, including our invasive plants we just talked about, and kind of infrastructure upgrades like road and trail maintenance, and recreation and trampoline can impact rare plant populations as well. So California is a hotspot of rarity, both nationwide and globally. Out of our 6,500 native plants, over a third of them are rare, which is really cool. We've got about as many native plant species as the countries of Japan or New Zealand. And we have more native plants than any other state in the US. So here's a map of all of the rare plant populations that are currently mapped throughout the state. We've got about 1,300 species that are endemic or only found in California. And in California state parks, we have almost 450 rare plants recorded and about 2,000 rare plant populations that have been documented in state parks so far. So one thing that CNPS does to help protect and conserve our rare plants is we assign a California rare plant rank. So this is a listing system analogous to the IUCN Red List or State and Federal Endangered Species Act. So there is conservation and legal implications with a rare plant rank being assigned, where species with certain ranks have to be considered under NEPA and CEQA for development or other types of impacts. So we're going to share some links in the chat to a lot of the things I'm talking about today. And so we'll share a link to the full definitions of these rare plant ranks. But if you're reading about rare plants, you'll often see the ranks listed next to the name. And so that'll look something like 1B1. So I'm just going to go through quick definition of what those ranks are. So first you start out with a rank 1 through 4. Our rank 1A and 2A are plants that are presumed extinct or extirpated, although sometimes they've been rediscovered, which is really exciting. Rank 1Bs are most rare plants, and they're rare or threatened anywhere they occur in or outside of California, and most of those are endemic to the state as well. Our rank 2 plants are plants that are rare in the state, but may be more common outside of California's borders, like some Pacific Northwest or Great Basin or Sonoran Desert species. Rank 3 are plants that are considered rare right now, but they need more taxonomic work or surveys. So if you are a student, you want to go to grad school, rank 3 plants are really good grad school project ideas if you're looking for something to study. And rank 4 is our watch list. So plants that have limited distribution, but aren't known to be facing serious threats at the time of listing. And these ranks are dynamic, so people can submit petitions if they think a rank needs to be changed or reevaluated. Maybe additional surveys will show that a rank 1 was not as rare as we used to think, so it'll get downranked to a rank 4. Or maybe a rank 4 does go through a lot of population declines and then it gets relisted as a rank 1. And then each rank will have a number that indicates how threatened it is, with 1 being the most seriously threatened, with over 80% of their populations facing immediate threats or declines, and 3 being more stable and facing less severe threats. So how can you tell if you have found a rare plant? As parks volunteers, if you're interested in learning more about rare plants in your park, you'll want to work with your park staff, especially the natural resources staff and your interpreters, to find out what rare plants are known from your park. So in most cases, your natural resources staff are going to have detailed information on where those populations are and what other species might be in the area. Then you'll want to use the identification resources we're going to talk about at the end of the talk to confirm ID. And most of our rare plants have limited geographic ranges. So one downside of having so many cool rare plants in the state is that we have a lot of species that look really similar. So you can't always confirm the ID just by looking at a picture, because a lot of rare and common species can look really similar. So here's an example of 2 different subspecies of Lilium pardalinum. Lilium pardalinum as a species is really widespread throughout the state. But one of the subspecies, the Pitkin marsh lily, is only known from 1 population in Sonoma. And to ID them, we have to use the geographic range. And there's some flower characteristics that you have to key out. So can't just tell by looking at a photo. So if you see a lily and you want to know if it's the Pitkin marsh lily, first thing you want to do is look at the range. So in most cases, these rare plants are going to have such a small range that if you're not in the immediate area, it's unlikely you have that rare species in front of you. And then you want to look at other things like soil type, geology, and microhabitat that these rare species are generally associated with. So as you get more into learning about plants and investigating rare plants, just keep this in mind that appearances can be really deceiving, and you'll want to go through this identification process to determine whether or not you've got a rare plant. And now we're going to get a chance to meet some cool species that are rare and grow in state parks. So a lot of people don't know that we have native orchids in California, but we have about 50 different kinds. And one of my favorites is the Piperia, or rain orchids. And this is a really cool species, white flowered rain orchid, that I've seed banked in 2 different state parks. And although when we hear orchid, we often think of wet habitats and, you know, a lot of like water and shade and dampness. A lot of these Piperia grow in more hot and arid microhabitats, and they bloom often in the middle of summer. So it can be kind of counterintuitive to look for them because it's not always what you think about an orchid doing. So this species has a large geographic range in California. They're found all the way from Santa Cruz County up to Del Norte. They grow in a number of state parks, and then the species does extend all the way up to Canada. However, they're found in really low numbers. If you find a population with like 30 plants, that's a huge population for this species. And they faced a number of declines from logging and recreation and trampling. So that's why they're considered rare. And I was able to seed bank the population in Big Basin about 4 days before the CZU lightning complex fire. So I'm hoping to revisit that population next summer and see how it's doing post-fire. But if something did happen to the population, since it's been seed banked, we now have that genetic material stored off-site. So those seeds are available for future restoration efforts, or if a species was to go extinct, they can be regrown from those seeds in the seed bank. And then I also made seed bank collections in Humboldt Redwood State Park. The Diablo Range is a really amazing part of California that's got a ton of botanical diversity. The rugged topography has led to a lot of isolation. So there's a lot of different rare plant species. Many of them are endemic to the Diablo Range and not found anywhere else. And then sadly, a lot of the area has also been impacted by development. So for some of these species, the last remaining populations are found in state parks or some of the adjacent park areas. So one of my favorite wildflowers in California are the Calochortus or Mariposa lilies. And this amazing Mount Diablo fairy lantern is just found around Costa area, kind of northern Diablo Range. There are other yellow fairy lanterns. So if you see another yellow fairy lantern and you want to confirm if it's the Mount Diablo one or not, it's really helpful to look at the range. And these guys are found in openings in chaparral and oak woodlands. And then here are 2 species that are only known at this time from California State Parks lands. They maybe once had more populations that have been developed and haven't been seen in a long time and are considered extirpated. So Mount Diablo jewel flower is a really cool genus, Streptanthus. They're in the mustard family, and Streptanthus are annuals, so they can evolve pretty rapidly since they have short generation times. And they do really well in hot and dry environments. So they've colonized a lot of really extreme habitats, especially serpentine soils. So there's many, many rare jewel flowers in California, and many of them are only found on serpentine soils. And then the Mount Diablo birdspeak, really cute little guy, only a couple of centimeters high. And they're in Orbancaceae, so they're related to paintbrushes. And yeah, both of these guys only found Mount Diablo State Park currently. This plant has got a really cool story, the Mount Diablo buckwheat. It was found to be widespread in the 1800s and early 1900s, but was declining by the 30s. And by 1940, no one could find it, likely due to development and grazing impacting those habitats that it used to be in. So it was considered extinct. And then in 2005, a grad student named Michael Park was working in a parcel that was newly added to Mount Diablo State Park. And he rediscovered it after close to 100 years of it being considered extinct. So this actually made international news. People have compared it with like refinding the ivory-billed woodpecker. And then even more exciting, in 2016, some botanists found another population on adjacent regional park lands that has like 1 million plants in it. So it's a really huge population. So it's great that both of these populations are now on protected parklands where they can be monitored closely. And they're doing a lot better. And we don't know all of the causes of why the range is so limited. Sometimes with rare plants, it can be easy to figure out why it only occurs in certain areas. This one, we're kind of not sure why it's so localized at this point. So there's still a lot more we need to learn about this plant. But one of our few exciting stories of a plant that has been delisted from extinction. Here's a plant that I've worked with a lot, Dudley's lousewort, ugly name, but very beautiful plant. There's only 2 populations that are currently known. There's some in Big Sur, and there's another population in Portola Redwood State Park in San Mateo County. And some recent genetic work has shown that they were once more widespread than they are now, but they've probably faced declines due to logging, development, and recreation. So it's really important that this population is protected in the state park. It's a pretty weird plant. Their distribution is a little puzzling, very patchy, isolated metapopulations where they occur. And one of the factors for that is probably inefficient dispersal. So, it's been observed that banana slugs and deer both munch on the plants, usually when they're in the flowering stage. They probably don't move the seeds around, but wasps have been observed visiting the fruits and removing seeds. And they've even found little bite marks under the microscope on the seeds from the wasps. So they probably eat the seed coating and then move the seeds maybe to feed young. And at this time, that's thought to be the primary disperser. But if you can imagine a wasp carrying a really big seed, they're not going to go very far. So that's one of the factors that limits where they occur now. And research with these guys is still ongoing. So I'm part of a working group with state parks staff and San Jose State and Portola and Castle Rock Foundation to do some more work with this species. So we're looking forward to unraveling some of the other mysteries about what it's doing and what it needs and how we can help grow and protect the population. Another really interesting one is the Monterey pine. So this is actually one of the most widely cultivated species in the whole world, cultivated for timber and for horticulture, but they're very rare in the wild. So there's only a couple of native stands in California and a few in Baja. And 2 of those stands are in state parks. There's one in Año Nuevo in Big Basin and another one in Point Lobos. And this species has evolved closely with fire. They have serotinous cones, which means they need heat from fire to open the cones and release the seeds. So normally the cones, when they develop, are closed really tightly. And so some seeds get out just with age, or on hot days, they can open up a little bit. But then after a fire comes through, many of the adult trees will die, but then the seeds open up out of the cones, and they have kind of a mass germination event. So that's just a natural part of this tree's life cycle. So the Año Nuevo and Big Basin stand did burn in the CZU lightning complex fire in 2020. But some of the seedlings have already started germinating. And so that's going to help give this stand of pines new life for maybe another 100 to 200 years, hopefully. And they also help shelter waterways that are home to some rare wildlife like San Francisco garter snake and California red-legged frog. And they support some other really cool rare plant species too. I also had some opportunities to do some post-fire surveys in Big Basin and Henry Coe in 2021. So another cool fire follower that we saw is Calandrinia breweri. This is a rank 4 rare species. And they grow in these little rosettes, but sometimes we saw the rosettes getting as big as 4 or 5 feet wide, which is pretty crazy. And they start out in huge numbers after a fire. So immediately afterwards, there might be thousands of them. But with each passing year following the fire, then there's less and less of them present. But they have really big seeds that are super robust, and they've evolved to just hang out in the seed bank for a really long time. And when another fire comes through, maybe in another 50 or 100 years, then they'll be ready to germinate. One of our coolest finds from those surveys was Malacathamnus arcuatus in Big Basin. So there's an old record for this species, and the only notes on the location were hills north of Big Basin. So we don't know where that was. No one had seen it in decades. The last fire was around 1906 in the park. And Malacathamnus are fire followers. So they do really well after the fire. And then again, as the habitat changes with decades after the fire, they eventually go away, and those seeds are just waiting in the seed bank for the fire. So we rediscovered this really large population in kind of the chaparral habitat on the north end of Big Basin, and that was a really cool discovery. And hopefully these plants will be around for several more decades so we can get a chance to see them. Another area with a lot of rare plants and amazing botanical diversity is Morro Bay area. Sadly, most of our coastlines in California have experienced really heavy development and type conversion. So there's not very many areas that have really nice intact coastal habitat, especially coastal dunes and some of the coastal marshes and estuaries. So the state parks in Morro Bay area are super important for protecting these species. And some of these are mostly found on state parks lands and not too much else outside of the parks. So I got to do some seed banking in that area and some rare plant surveys for some of the cool dune species. The Mesa Horkelia is in San Luis Obispo and then down towards LA. So they really like the coastal dunes, but they also do grow in inland habitats too. But they're declining quite a bit in LA County. Not totally sure why some of those declines are happening. So San Luis Obispo is a really good kind of like stronghold for this species. Then there's another rare shrub, Blockman's ragwort. They've actually got pretty limited range, mostly around San Luis Obispo and Santa Barbara. And they're a strict coastal dunes obligate, so only found in those dune areas really close to the coast. And these guys are also habitat for Blainville's horn lizard, which is a rare lizard that I saw while I was doing some of these surveys. This is another fun one that I seed banked. Sand almond has really giant fuzzy seeds, which are super cool. They're also another shrub that likes sandy soils adjacent to the coast. And this is one that has a rank 4, but as we've been doing surveys, we found there's actually not very many populations and they're really impacted by development. So this is one that we might eventually change the rank to be a rank 1 if we do additional research and find out that it is indeed more rare. There's also a lot of rare manzanitas in the area. Manzanitas are really hard to ID. So if you want to go down the manzanita ID journey, I wish you luck. Very difficult to ID, but there's some really cool ones. So Morro manzanita, mostly just found within Montana de Oro State Park. That one's more coastal. And then Pecha manzanita is a little more inland, also mostly within the state park. And we seed banked the Pecha manzanita in 2020. Here's kind of an ugly shrub that I'm rather fond of, California sea blight. It's federally endangered. It used to be very widespread around the Bay Area and San Luis Obispo area, but has declined a lot from coastal development. But luckily, there's some really good populations around Morro Bay. and it's also habitat for a rare snail, the Moro shoulder band. So as you've seen from some of my other pictures, a lot of the times rare plants are in beautiful areas and you get to go to really pristine and remote habitats to see these beautiful plants. But a lot of them are just fighting to coexist with humans, and they're just hanging on in a few of these habitats that's no longer optimal, but they are still living and doing the best they can. So here's some Sueda habitat next to a dumpster and a seafood restaurant, which I'm very happy to see that despite everything that's happened to the area, they are still persisting. They've got these really, really tiny flowers that are so hard to see. The first few times I looked at them, I could barely tell where the flowers were. We did seed bank this one as well, and each of those flowers just makes one giant seed, and you have to remove them with tweezers or your fingernails, and it takes a really long time. But I just really like this shrub in part because I feel like it's really tenacious, maybe not the most beautiful, maybe not growing in the coolest places anymore, but I just kind of like it. And then another area with a lot of amazing diversity is Anza Borrego State Park. So maybe some of you have been for some of the super blooms like in 2019. And Anza's got, in part just because it's a large park and because it's in an area with a lot of diversity, there's a lot of species that also mostly occur within the state park. Many of them are annuals, meaning they only grow for 1 year, and those annuals are going to be dependent on rainfall to come up. So sometimes they might not even be visible on the surface for several years if there's droughts. So surveying for these species can be kind of hard. You have to really go when there's rain, and they can kind of bloom any time of the year if the rain comes. So I heard there was some rain recently, so might be a good time to get out there right now. The pink teddy bear cholla sounds really cute, but that's one you don't want to step on or get stuck to your pants. Cool rare cactus, and then these tiny annuals, the hellhole seed scale and the botany women thread plant. The thread plant was just recently described. It also is only found in Anza Borrego State Park. If you're wondering about the name, it was named after the trail name of the woman who found it. And those guys, again, want to only survey for them when you've got some good rain years. And finally, the Torrey pine, which is another cool rare tree. It's only got 2 populations. And so most of the trees are protected in the Torrey Pine State Natural Reserve and Extension. And our partners at San Diego Zoo are doing some cool restoration and monitoring work over there. So they did an outplanting with over 350 seedlings. And now they're monitoring the effects of microclimate and other factors that affect survival for restoration efforts to help kind of fine tune the restoration process for this species. And they're also being affected really heavily by bark beetles. So they're doing some monitoring on effects of bark beetles on the population and some of the techniques for controlling the bark beetle infestations. Okay, so that was just a few of the 444 rare plants in state parks. But hopefully, if you're interested in seeing more, you can get a chance to go out and find out what's in your area. And you don't have to have a degree or be a trained botanist to make cool plant discoveries or to contribute to conservation of native plants. So luckily, we've got a lot of really cool resources that are available for free to anyone. And most of them are online. So even if you're new to learning about plants, there's lots of great ways for you to learn more. So CNPS has got chapters all over the state. That's a great way to connect with local experts. There's a lot of free talks, both online and in person, and workshops and other educational opportunities to learn more about your local flora. Many CNPS chapters also do stewardship efforts in state parks. So you can learn more about who's doing what in your local parks. And the chapter websites have a lot of good resources, and they often link to plant lists or copies of books with local floras. So it's really great to get local information. It's just going to help you narrow down what plants are in your area. So I encourage you to check out your local chapter, and hopefully that's a good way to start learning more about what's in your area. So one of my favorite apps is iNaturalist. You can use the phone app or on the desktop, and it's a database of all living things. So birds, bugs, plants, you name it. You can use iNat to look up species information. You can see distribution maps. And one of the tools that's really useful is for monitoring phenology, or what a plant is doing at a certain time. So if you want to find a certain species and you're wondering when it blooms, you can look up past observations and look at photos and see what months it's blooming in. iNaturalist also has projects which are really useful if you want to either make a plant list for your park or do other types of data collection. Projects are a great way to organize that. It's also kind of like a natural history notebook, so you can use it to keep a record of all of your observations. And it has crowdsourced ID, so when you observe something, you upload a photo and you can add whatever level of taxonomy you recognize. So whether that's plants or oaks or coast live oak, and then other naturalists will come on and either confirm that ID or suggest a different one. So here's kind of an example of a project. CNPS is doing a project called California Fire Followers to monitor what's coming up post-fire throughout the state, and a number of state parks are included in these projects. And here's kind of your results you get for looking up a genus or species. Another really cool website is Flora. This is a database of native and introduced plants for all of California. There's a search function where you can look up by genus or family or species name, and then you can also filter by county or life form or when it blooms. So this is really helpful if you want to find out like what plants are found in your county. And there's profiles for each species that have some photos. They show a range map and links to other resources, including CalPhotos, which is a database of photos of native plants. And there's an app where you can record and upload your own plant data. One of the coolest features on CalFlora is this tool called What Grows Here. So this allows you to do a search of native plants by an area on a map, and you can also draw a polygon, and that creates an illustrated plant list with photos that you can take with you if you're going to do a hike. So this is what the output looks like. It shows the bloom window and the photos and the family name and scientific and common name. And then when you're doing your search, there's a layer called CPAD, California Protected Areas. And so that's really useful for looking up the boundaries of parks. And then you can draw a polygon around your park and do a search. And then you can filter by bloom month. And you can also do a filter for rare plants to see what rare plants might be in the area, either in your park or if you're going to go out and do a hike. So I love this tool. Encourage everyone to check it out and make a plant list for where you're going to go. And then one really useful thing about this feature is that it's a great way to compare common and rare species that might be co-occurring. So here's an example of two helianthus species from Anza Borrego. So as you can see from the photos, they look pretty similar and they can bloom at the same time. They grow in the same microhabitats and they look so similar. And to ID them, you actually have to look at things like the length of hairs on the leaves and the stem. Pretty hard to ID. But if you do that What Grows Here feature, that's a good way to see what similar looking species will be in the area at the same time. So then you can study up on how to tell them apart before you go out and look for them. And then to confirm the ID, the best way to do that is to key it out using a dichotomous key. So the Jepson eFlora is our main resource for all of California. It's available for free online for all of our native vascular plants and plant families. So this is a really good in-depth resource for plant identification. It is going to take a little more technical knowledge, but there's a glossary to look up all the terms and lots of great resources online to learn more about keying. So it's going to have a description of each plant, and then this is the key that's going to show how you tell it apart from other species in the genus or family. So if you want to go out looking for particular rare plants, you'll want to look at the key and identify what features you need to tell it apart from other species. So that's a great way to prepare for doing a survey. And the Jepson Herbarium also has a really amazing collection of videos online. So they've got a lot of videos organized by plant family on different species or habitats. So this is a really cool free resource to learn more about plant families. And then the CNPS Rare Plant Inventory is also available for free online. And so this is a database showing all of our rare plants. You can get the name, look up photos, see the bloom period, see how many populations there are. And then for many accounts, they list the threats and the microhabitat that you might find them in. And while the exact location of the rare plants are obscured, you can search on a quad or a county level. So this is a good way to create a list of rare plants that are found in your area. And then finally, I'm just going to close it out with some tips for learning more about rare plants and just working with plants in general. So rare plant data is sensitive. If exact locations were published for our rare plants and available to the general public, they'd be at risk from poaching or just trampling and too much visitation. So again, just want to encourage you, if you want to learn more about rare plants and what's found in your park, to work with your park staff. And your park might already have monitoring or stewardship efforts in place to work with those species. And then if you do find a rare plant, make sure you don't post the exact location online. If I'm posting a plant photo to my social media, I'll usually just say the county or the general area, so I won't be giving out too much information. And in databases like iNaturalist and CalFlora, you can also obscure the location of rare species, so people won't be able to see the exact location, and that will help protect those populations. And then if you want to narrow down where to look for rare plants, look up the range maps on the rare plant inventory, CalFlora and Jepson eFlora. And those resources will list the general flowering window of when it might be a good time to go look for them. Although with the drought in the past few years and with climate change, the phenology windows are really changing a lot. And especially with drought, I'm seeing things blooming even a month or two earlier. So it's a good rule of thumb, but they can bloom outside of those phenology windows that are listed. And then you can use some of the other databases to monitor when people are posting observations of them seeing a particular plant flower. And then CNPS also has a Facebook group, which is a great place to see what other people are seeing. And you can also post ID questions on there as well. And then the best way to get good at botany is to learn about California plant families. I really like this book put out by UC Press. This is a great overview of the families. And as you learn the families, you'll learn different traits to tell them apart from each other. And that's going to be a really good foundation for being able to make plant IDs more easily. There's also really good videos on Jepson Herbarium, and CNPS also has a YouTube channel with tons and tons of talks. We put on workshops, so does Jepson Herbarium, covering a lot of plant families with both general introductions and more detailed classes about particular families. If you want to attend a workshop but can't afford it's often worth reaching out to whoever is putting it on and asking about scholarship or volunteer opportunities. So that's a good way if you want to take a workshop but can't cover the cost. And then once again, this way to confirm ID is by keying. So you'll want to look up the traits you need to identify it before you go out in the fields, and then use those traits to make your documentation. So if the key says that you need leaf hairs, then make sure you get really good pictures of the leaf or a particular flower part. And if you can't get photos on your camera, then you can take detailed notes about what you observed. And then you'll want to check out those range maps and the geology, vegetation associations, and microhabitat to make sure you're in the right area to look for them. And then finally, you can also compare photos in CalPhotos, CalFlora, and iNaturalist. And then I really recommend tracking down your local floras and checklists, just narrow down your list of what species might be in your area. That's going to make it a lot easier to arrive on an ID. A few words of warning, iNaturalist has a really cool AI feature that suggests IDs. There's a few other apps that do it as well, Seek, and I think PlantNet, a few others. So those IDs are just suggestions. So you want to use that as a jumping off point to do your own research. So look up a few different suggestions that it offers, but it might be totally off base. So you just want to use that as your starting point and not assume that the AI suggestion is the final ID. And then a lot of these databases and platforms can have errors. If you see a rare species that lives in Northern California and there's one point in Southern California in the wrong habitat, you can conclude that might be an error. So just use all these tools as a starting off point for your research, but also be aware that there's some pitfalls to using them as well. And just want to thank some of the folks that helped me out with slide content and photos. And I worked with so many great state parks staff, I couldn't fit them all on this slide, and also lots of great volunteer organizations. My volunteer group, Waddell Creek Association, Bertola Castle Rock Foundation. And I've just really enjoyed working with state parks folks, staff, and volunteers and community. So very excited to be able to share all this information with you today. So there should be some links going out in the chat to all of the resources that I referred to. Also going to share a link to Rare Plant Treasure Hunt public events page. We're kind of winding down for winter, but we do have events that are open to the public. And feel free to send me an email if you want to chat about rare plants or learn more. Drop me a line, I'd be happy to talk. And now I'm going to turn it back over to State Parks Foundation.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Amy. And thank you everyone for joining us on this lovely fall afternoon to learn more about rare plants. We hope to see you at one of our upcoming volunteer work days. In addition to supporting habitat restoration efforts, you can join a trash cleanup day, help repair trails, and much more. So you can find an event near you on our events calendar, which we'll link in the chat. As a reminder, we will also be sending a follow-up email with the slides and resources that we've linked in the chat as well. Please note that we will include a link to a short 3-minute survey, and we would really appreciate your feedback about today's experience. It will help us inform future learning opportunities we provide to our wonderful volunteers like yourselves. And with that, we hope you all had a great day, but please stick around for the Q&A portion.
And so if you all have any questions, you can use the Q&A function to submit some questions that we can relay to Amy right now in the last about 10 minutes of our time together. If the Q&A section is a little confusing, feel free to put them in the chat and we'll answer as many as possible. We do have a few queued up from while you were talking, Amy. This one's a little specific, so if you're not sure how to answer it, we can definitely follow up with them and maybe connect with some of the local environmental scientists. But Sandra, who's one of our core leaders down in San Diego, was wondering if you had any knowledge about specific treatments that are currently being used to combat the bark beetle impacts on the Torrey pines, or just
Yeah, so
protection
it's
of them in general.
the San Diego Zoo and Center for Plant Conservation are doing that work down there. So I don't have their emails queued up, but they would be the people to get in touch with. If you want to send me an email, I'd be happy to connect you with them. But they're currently trying out different treatment types, and they'd be able to tell you about kind of some of their results and what they're doing down there.
Thank you, Amy. I'm not sure if you have any like profiles for yourself that are public, but are there any social media handles you'd like us to share in the follow-up? We have some folks really interested in seeing the work that you're doing, and if you're if there's a place in or a certain chapter of California Native Plant Society, or any kind of personal Twitter handles that you'd like to share, people would love to follow you and kind of continue to learn about the work that you're doing.
Sure. I would say follow the California Native Plant Society social media, both Facebook and Instagram, and there's email lists. We also have a blog that the Rare Plant Program puts on. So I'm not sure if I included a link to that. I'll make sure you guys get it. So that's a good way to see kind of like what the Rare Plant team is up to. I just have personal social media, so it's I've got some photos on Instagram. It's just Amy L. Patten, but it's my personal page. So there's non-work stuff in there too. But I do love photography, so I post a lot of plant photos and stuff. But yeah, I would follow the CNPS page. We'll have a lot of great content. And I work all over the state, so a lot of chapters will be doing rare plant events, and each chapter has like different social media for themselves too. So I think there'll be a link sent out to finding your local chapter, and then that's a good way to find links for other local chapter things like that.
Thank you, Amy. Some more questions and top conversations around the Torrey pine down in San Diego, and other places. And so Frederick is asking if the Torrey pines on Santa Rosa Islands are genetically distinct from those on the mainland.
They
And then
are. Yeah. Oh,
perfect.
sorry, keep going.
No, and then Tom kind of put in the chat that there's also an area in Japan that also has Torrey pines. And so maybe talking a little bit more about the different kind of families and how, while they can be rare in some places, maybe they're not rare in others, maybe touching a little bit on that with this conversation.
Yeah, so one thing that's a little bit different about plants than wildlife is we have a lot of subspecies and varieties that get their own status and ranking. So meaning they're part of a larger subspecies or a larger species, but some subspecies and varieties can be rare and others aren't. So sometimes those occur in really isolated places like Channel Islands and San Diego County. And so just due to isolation, they've become separated over time. I haven't worked with Torrey pine personally, so I don't have a ton of information about them. Really cool about the ones in Japan. I didn't know about that. I would guess they are a different species over there, but maybe members of the same genus. So the rare plant inventory is a great place to kind of like look up the differences between some of those rare subspecies and varieties. But yeah, San Diego Zoo is doing cool work with them down there, and they can tell you way more about Torrey pines than I could.
And I'm not seeing any other questions. I'll kind of wait another few moments in case people are typing them in. Okay. I'm not seeing anything else. And so I think, we can probably start wrapping up, and really encourage all of you as you're starting to review the items that we send you all, like Amy said, please, reach out to her. Feel free to reach out to the volunteer team with any questions, specific around the park. I think you all know that the park staff we work with are just so wonderful and dedicated, and I'm sure they'd be excited to hear some questions from you all about this specific topic too. So with that, thank you all again. And thanks to Amy as well. Yes, just reiterating some questions and re-answering some questions in the chat. We'll be sure to share all this wonderful knowledge with you. We'll have the recording link as well as the presentation slides, which I, also concur. They're just so beautiful and wonderful. That photography was really exciting and just so well labeled. So we want this to be a resource for you all to look at and continue that knowledge on your own. We'll probably have a separate, just like Word document with all of the links and describing the different resources and tools too. So we'll package that up this afternoon and send that to you by tomorrow at the latest.
Okay, thanks everyone.
Have a good day, everyone. Thank you so much.